You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to the middle of the week. It is hump day, my friends. You know what that means? We got to start the show by hearing from the camel. Play it, buddy.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woohoo! Indeed, it is. It's the middle. You're halfway to the weekend. We're going to get you all the way to go home time on a Friday afternoon. But in the meantime, it's Wednesday, and that's JP pushing buttons on the board. Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm great.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed power stays on all this.
Yeah, no sudden outages today, please. Thank you very much. Everything had to get rebooted yesterday, and it did in record time, by the way.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, it did. We got a great show laid on for you. You know the deal. If we're doing the camel at the beginning of the show on a Wednesday, that means we're also going to have a thing called the Grand Council coming up at top of the third hour. My buddies Jeff Poore and Dale Jackson calling in, and we'll just dialogue and ping each other with questions about relevant current events and to see where the chips fall. That's at top of hour number 3, the Grand Council with Jeff Poore, Dale Jackson, and little old me. And then I still got a whole triple dipper filled up with stuff, so hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. So coming out the gate, the very first one, didn't get to it yesterday, but it's a good thing I didn't because more things happened since then. I'm calling it, can we deport anyone? I mean, what the heck? I mean, if they're allowed in, shouldn't that mean they're also allowed to be put out? I mean, they're not citizens. They're here illegally. What the heck? Well, we're having a darn time, if you will, of getting illegal aliens deported. Why? Because the liberal left-leaning judges are constantly filing nationwide injunctions. I'll tell you about more, to include one judge who says he's going to hold the Trump administration in contempt and maybe even prosecution. What the heck? All right, that's number 1, Triple Dipper. Can we deport anyone? Number 2, this is an odd one. There are stories out there right now of members of the Pete Hegseth team at the Pentagon being put out on paid leave. They said they'd be investigating leaks, and apparently they have, and now we have 2 individuals who have been put out on paid leave while an investigation is concluded. Now, on the one hand, you might go, that's scandalous, that's bad, it's bad PR. Is it? I think it's the other way around. I think it shows that we're willing to clean house. We're not gonna do like 4 years of Biden where nobody is held accountable. So yeah, number 2, Triple Dipper, I'll tell you about the details, clean house. And then number 3, I just yesterday felt heavy. I thought, I got to find a lighter topic for the end of the day today, and I did. I found some cool stuff about how many conservatives are in Hollywood and in the music industry. There's a bunch of them, y'all. I'm going to give you some names and some thoughts of things that perhaps you did not even recognize. So that's number 3 on the Triple Dipper, conservative stars. I'll tell you more about it then. All right, well, let me jump on into the Right Side Way opening monologue, and I'll just remind you guys, as always, that Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee up in Huntsville, Stan McDonald is the sponsor daily of the Right Side Way, and I'll tell you more about attorney Stan McDonald here in just a few minutes. All right, let me start by asking you this. You ever had one of those professors, or maybe an instructor or a classroom teacher at any level at all, who was just quirky? Like I remember my dad telling me he had a professor at the University of North Alabama, it was called Florence State back then, who literally paced and chain smoked nonstop during his lectures on a raised dais in the front of the room. Dad said it was almost unnerving. It was distracting because the guy would pace back and forth while staring at the ceiling the whole time, never looking at the class, and his toes would stop at the edge of the dais every time without looking down. But on top of that, he was chain smoking. And all he did was he would take an occasional long drag off his filterless Camels, and then he would never blow it out. Dad said it was like the smoke just disappeared until a minute or so later, it would begin wafting out of his mouth and nose while he was speaking. He never huffed it out. He said it was really distracting, and yeah, it was super quirky. Okay, so my years of study, I've had some humdingers. In my sophomore year in college at the University of South Alabama, I was down in Mobile. I was in an English lit class. It was a decent class, but the professor, he was quirky, almost jumpy. If you asked him for a question, he would like dart his eyes over toward you like he was scared by your raised hand. So one day we were discussing something to do with the Mayflower. Remember the ship that brought the Pilgrims? The Mayflower. And he made the statement that after the original Pilgrims had disembarked from the Mayflower, that it hoisted anchor to return to England, and no one knows what happened to it after that. Well, I did. So I raised my hand. And I got the nervous, jumpy look that the quirky professor always gave, and like he wondered what I was up to. So he called on my name, and I let him know that I had lived in England for several years and had actually visited a 260-year-old building that had been built from the Mayflower's salvaged timbers. His response was he got all jumpy. He said, well, I don't know about that. And I simply said, well, sir, I was there. They even showed us the beam in the ceiling that was fractured during the Mayflower voyage repaired by the crew, which is historically documented. To which he replied once more, I just don't know anything about that. I don't think so. I don't think so. Talk about an awkward moment. So I just shrugged and let it go. But after class, just trying to be conversational, I walked up to him, my jumpy lecturer, my quirky guy, and I said something like, hey, sir, what I said about the Mayflower, I mean, it's real. It was really something to see. I was there. He avoided eye contact, looked around and says, well, I just don't know about that. Gathered up his briefcase and almost ran out of the room. Like I said, the man was just, he was quirky. But in retrospect, here's the thing. What was happening then, I think, was he's quirky, yeah. But in retrospect, I think it was really that his viewpoint was being challenged. And it was being challenged openly. And he did not know how to respond to that. He wasn't used to being challenged, I guess. It wasn't a question about his syllabus material. I wasn't rewriting history or changing the base constructs of English lit. It was just a little factoid about a sidebar. But yet I was personally a physical witness to something, and I tried to apply my reality to his quirkiness, and I was surprised when he just rejected it out of hand. And that, my friends, that is exactly what we see happening around us all the time right now with liberals. Yep, I'm going there. So today's progressive left does not just want does not want you to question their version of reality. The progressive left is not at all interested in whether or not you have an opinion on anything at all. The progressive left does not want to debate an agenda or the finer points of domestic or foreign policy, and it does not matter whether you're an actual witness to the events that are being bandied about in the public square by them. No, the progressive left actually just wants, demands, insists that we must deny our reality in favor of their version of reality, but that goes beyond mere quirkiness at that point. That's actually dangerous. You see, when reality can be freely denied, it means there's no absolutes. In a world that has no absolutes, only those in power can get their way because truth becomes relative. In a world without absolutes, there can be no true justice because people cannot be held accountable for their actions because their actions are just merely considered to be a product of their own truth. You cannot deny me my truth. It's my reality. You're just trying to impose your morality on me. No, we're actually trying to keep a basis of truth from which to work so we can know where everybody stands. Yeah, when truth becomes relative, then nothing is true and anything goes. It reminds me of a passage from Acts chapter 3 and 4. In that passage, Peter and John had just healed a man, and the religious leaders lost their minds over it. They thought they had gotten rid of this whole Jesus thing when they crucified Christ, but in the book of Acts, after the resurrection, the early church was still growing by leaps and bounds. So when Peter and John healed a man and the crowd saw it all happen, they didn't know what to do about it. So their solution? Well, they hauled him in and told them never to speak again in the name of Jesus. There, that'll fix it. But we're told that Peter reared up, looked him in the eye, and he said this. He said, quote, whether or not I should speak in the name of Jesus, you decide. But I cannot stop speaking what I've seen and heard. Did you get that? Peter basically told the religious leaders of the day to go pound sand. He was a witness. Nobody could tell him that his own personal experience, what he saw with his own eyes and believed with his own heart and mind, was not real. Those religious leaders, they were more quirky, and they were also more dangerous. Well, that's where we are right now in the fight for America, to be able to deport people that are here illegally. For 4 years, we were told the border was secure, right? Which was absolutely farcical because we could see it with our own eyes. We were witnesses. The border was no more secure from leakage than an open hatch on a submarine. Millions streamed across our border. Whole states declared themselves to be sanctuaries for illegal migrants. Here's a thought. If the border was secure, then why did we need sanctuary cities? Because you only need sanctuary if you've done something wrong and you need protection. Well, it was an altered reality. It was beyond quirky. It was dangerous, and it still is. So now we're finally in position to fight back. And the latest ludicrous argument that we're having to endure is related to whether or not Biden's open border policies mean that people who came here illegally cannot be sent back. And the classic case before us is an El Salvadorian MS-13 gang member named Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia. Garcia was in the country illegally, by his own admission. He declared that he is not a gang member and that back home there were death threats from another gang, though, that led him to flee to the United States. Okay, so you're not a gang member, but one gang is trying to kill you. He was arrested, by the way, in 2019 for being here illegally. And after his arrest, he married his pregnant girlfriend, who's a U.S. citizen, while he was in the ICE detention center. Did you get that? He was not a U.S. citizen. He was not even married to one. He married her while he was in prison. He then applied for asylum because of fears of going back home. And he was released on detainer and went back into the community in Maryland. But in March of this year, he was detained again and sent off to El Salvador's Secot prison. Liberal heads are exploding. He's the poster boy for everything that's gone wrong with the deportation process. Never mind that he was a gang member. Never mind that he was here illegally by his own admission. What matters to the left right now is they can refer to him as the resident of Maryland and a husband and a father. They alter reality to gain ground in their argument about one man in order to argue that all deportations must come to an end. It's a quirky argument. It's also dangerous. But in my opinion, Democrats don't even believe their own lies. They would no more welcome Mr. Garcia into their home than the man in the moon. And the reason is that the left is not principled in their viewpoint. They will bend the truth to suit their needs to support their agenda so their base will like them. But keep in mind what Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher once said. She said, quote, "If you just set out to be liked, you should be prepared to have to compromise on anything at any time and you will accomplish nothing." She also famously asked the question, do you think that you would ever have heard of Christianity if the apostles had gone out and said, I believe in consensus? Because you see, going back to my example in Acts chapter 4, Peter and John, they stood in front of the religious leaders who were demanding that they deny their own reality, deny that they had witnessed and experienced anything that challenged the status quo, to which Peter simply said, I cannot stop speaking what I've seen and heard. And then Peter and John went out and changed the world. Yeah, they changed the world by sticking to what they knew to be true and refusing to accept the new version of reality they were being told to believe. Ain't nothing quirky about that. Can I get a witness? And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Hey, you watch it, man. This guy Garcia, he's the straw man right now. He's the straw man they will use as the argument against all things deportation. He's everything wrong with Trump. He's everything wrong with the Department of Justice and ICE and all of it. He's everything wrong with the entire process of sending illegal people back to where they came from. One man, straw man with an altered reality. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative, just plain right, just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, text lines are open. Text me your thoughts. Call me if you want to, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. So, yeah, a couple of y'all already are, and I will, before I go any further, though, have to remind you guys that attorney Stan McDonald is the sponsor daily of the Right Side Way monologue. So, yeah, Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee up in Huntsville. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law. And I know him personally, and I will just tell you right now, Stan McDonald is not just a lawyer who's good at his job and will do a great, work advocating for your needs, but he has also been in the fray, man, in the trenches on all the politics and the policies that right side ruffians care about for years. Just like he's an OG ruffian. That being said, attorney Stan McDonald, he's represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions. Stan knows how to represent you in any local, state, or federal court. I like to say if Stan McDonald is on your side, you will have no greater friend, and likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So that being said, I'm going to tell you how to reach him. You ready? Here we go. Attorney Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. His phone number is 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. Tell him you heard about it on Right Side Radio, please. Okay, the thing. No representation made. The quality legal service before was great. The quality legal service before the lawyers. Come on.
Yeah, I think you're getting in a groove with this one.
You think so?
Yeah, I give that like a 9.3 right there.
Ooh, I'm in the nines. That's 2 or 3 days in a row.
I know. You're getting on a roll. It's gonna get to the point where you're just gonna sound like the computer one, though.
I'm just gonna
yeah. And then they're gonna hire you to do those.
Nice. Text lines are indeed open. Some of y'all have jumped all in it. Let's see what we got
By
here.
the way, real quick, we
Yeah.
had a couple of comments on YouTube. Pat Jones says hello from Decatur, but then
Pat
Facebook.
Jones, hello.
Facebook, Betty Willoughby says, thank you, Phil Williams, for your voice of truth. So there you go.
I love Miss Betty. That's a sweet, godly woman. We go to church with her. She's wonderful. Sam from Priceville checking in on the text line. He says, come help us celebrate the city of Priceville turning 50. Well, there you go. Bringing in Colin Ray and having a big doings. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Let's see what else we got. Scott from Somerville says, great monologue, Colonel. Had an English instructor in college that counted off in a paper because I used the word angst. She said it wasn't a word and got mad when I showed her the word in the dictionary. She never did give me that point back. You know what's funny? Now that he says that, so that same English lit professor I was talking about, the one who was like, not sure about that whole Mayflower thing. Well, it was kind of weird. Here I am in college and he would do spelling tests, which I thought was very juvenile, but whatever. So you had like a 10-question spelling test every week. And like in that same week, we had a spelling test and the word Mayflower was on the test. And so this is like 2 days later. And I spelled it Mayflower, Mayflower. He counted off for it. And I went up there and I said, sir, I'm sorry, but that's the spelling for Mayflower. He goes, you said Matflower. And I said, that's a Y. And he goes, I don't see enough curve on the top of of what looks like a T. And I said, sir, I know I would be saying, I said Mayflower in class. I'm the one who raised my hand and talked about the Mayflower. And he goes, I just don't see it. I think he was getting back at me.
Probably. But what's funny that is he expects college students that he has to test them to know how to spell Mayflower. I think a third grader could spell Mayflower.
You would, that's the way I felt, though.
Yeah.
Never got that point back either. More text messages and lots of stuff. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all will talk about this show. Whew. Goes from Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I mean down to that loveliest little village on the plains called Auburn, straight across the border into what we now recall Fort Benning. And then, big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. I think I've gotten that down to a groove now.
I think so.
It just happens.
Whenever you focus. Yeah. But whenever you're looking at something else.
It's hard when I've got – y'all would not believe how many distractions there are in front. I've got 2 TV screens. I've got literally 4 video screens on my computer open. And then there's JP who's always dancing or doing something here in the studio.
Always, yeah.
Just always. just craziness. John from Huntsville checking in says, Phil, spectacular monologue. Thank you. And you should have titled it Teachers Smoking Camels on Camel Day. So also, I can't wait to hear about conservative stars in the music industry because technically I'm a registered BMI songwriter. There you go. Just wrote a new country song lyric that Nashville's putting music to. Wow. And the demo should be done pretty soon. And who knows, maybe I'll get Jeff from Indiana to sing it for me since he gave a spectacular singing performance on Dale Jackson's show this morning. Oh, my goodness.
Interesting.
This is devolving fast.
Does he want to give an encore on our show today?
Jeff, if you're listening, be careful. Connor from Huntsville says, hey, Phil, Connor from Huntsville, using the MS-13 guy as a straw man may have worked in the past, but thanks to alternate media, we have an opportunity to tell the story properly, and the mainstream media and Democrats are going to have a hard time getting traction. I agree, man. Connor, you nailed it. That is why I am so glad that we have the ability now to post what we want on X, to have this radio show, to have podcasting, and to have other news sources that have decided to rise up in the middle of what has been a dearth of actual news. It's one thing, by the way, and I do not mind, here we were an example. Rightside Media is an example. We tell you up front what you're going to get is conservative content. We make no bones about it. This is largely a news/opinion-based company. We're ideologically based if you get down to it. But when you say you're news, you got to be news. Like 1819 News is really good at pushing out all the facts and not calling the balls and strikes. But you also know they may have some conservatives that work there, but they don't try to just make it about opinion all the time. CNN, not so much. AL.com, not so much. Jeff from Indiana checking in says, Phil, you have to remember, being a liberal Democrat is actually their religion as much as it is the radical Muslims, which I'm sure you experienced when you were in country. He said, no matter how much you befriend them or try to show them the truth, they are steadfast in their beliefs and are willing to sacrifice themselves for their agenda, which in this case is trying to destroy America the way it is or destroying infidels if they were Muslims. Their belief system is just as firm as you and yours as a Christian. I find no argument. Yes, the radicals, you're right. That would be accurate. Barry from Athens is on a story that I'll be getting to in a minute. It says Judge Boasberg, I believe, was said to not have jurisdiction over flights to El Salvador. How can he hold the Trump administration in contempt? I don't know, Barry. I don't know because you're right. My recollection was jurisdiction was shifted. And if you're not familiar, we're going to hear in a minute when I get to the story on the first dipper about Judge Boasberg rearing his head again and saying that the Trump administration is in contempt of his original order to return the flight that was taking repatriated MS-13 and Tren de Aragua guys down to El Salvador. My recollection was that the judge did say that jurisdiction was vested in the locale in which they were being detained on U.S. soil before being deported, meaning Louisiana. Maybe I got it wrong, but Barry, you and I seem to be remembering it the same way. And then last one before I go to the dipper, John N. from Huntsville says, Phil, perhaps I missed it in your monologue, but the hero that the Maryland, doofus senator, he says, is advocating for was found a judge. But what are we talking about? Is this the same topic?
The Maryland senator who wanted to go down to El Salvador and bring him back.
Are we talking about Cory Booker?
No, it's Cory Booker is doing it with him. I'd have to look up the Maryland senator.
I thought Cory Booker was from Baltimore, Maryland, isn't he?
He is from New Jersey.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. He said 2 different judges to have been a gang member, sufficient enough for the deportation order to be enforced. 2 different judges. So there's now judges' findings and supporting subsequent orders that offend the liberal tribal libs. He said, let Van Hollen go south and they won't let him visit his constituent. There really is justice somewhere. That was a hard to read, John, but I know where you are now.
Chris Van Hollen is the senator.
It is Chris Van Hollen, yeah. So that's right. So it's right now it's Cory Booker and Chris Van Hollen, right?
Yeah.
That's New Jersey and Baltimore. Yeah, and he's right. He's the Maryland doofus senator. There you go. If you're not familiar with the backstory on that, and I'm going to get into it here in a minute, we've got a situation where the Maryland senator and the New Jersey senator are saying, we're just going to go down there and we're going to get him out of that prison. We're going to do a welfare check. No, you're not. They're not going to let you in. You don't get entree into another country's prisons. Just good luck with that. And oh, by the way, you're not like a Tier 1 special mission unit running down there for a hostage rescue.
But they know that. That's just why this is for show.
That's absolutely for show. It's absolutely for show. Absolutely, positively. All right, so here's my question, Dipper number 1. Can we deport anybody? I mean, what the heck, man? So think about how little due process was involved in the violation of our laws for them to come here. Even the Biden administration itself was violating our laws in letting them come here. And then the Biden administration was crafting new and different and very innovative means to get them here, like the CHNV visas, the parole, the Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela program, where all they had to do is go, hey, by the way, we're scared. Did we mention we're scared? And they'd send you a plane ticket and fly you here and ship you all over the United States. It's just defies reason. But what we're finding more and more right now is the legal system is stacked in favor right now of libs. And they are constantly, the Trump administration, constantly facing injunctions against the efforts to deport known illegals. And all they're trying to do right now, by the way, is mostly, for the most part, get the criminals off the streets. So illegal alien criminals. And then you go one step further. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798, that's the one that Trump declared was applicable to drug cartels and Tren de Aragua and MS-13, transnational gangs and cartels. I want you to think about something. The left is like, we're not at war with the cartels. Of course we are. We're not at war with Tren de Aragua. Oh, by God, yes, we are. Well, how can you possibly say that? They're not geographically based. They don't have governance. They don't have their own flag. They don't have an embassy. Neither does ISIS. Neither does Al-Qaeda. Neither does the Houthis that we're bombing right now. Neither does Hezbollah. I mean, they may control territories, but they are not considered to be a sovereign nation. Those are non-geographic terrorist entities, non-state actors, they call them. In this case, Trump has decided enough. How many Americans have to die before we realize we're actually in a fight? So he declared Tren de Aragua, MS-13, and the Mexican drug cartels as enemies of the state. And under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a law that has been in place since almost as long as our country has been around, it's still on the books. And in the absence of being either reversed or overturned on constitutional grounds by the Supreme Court or superseded by a subsequent statutory law, enacted by the legislative process, it's still good law. It doesn't matter that it was passed 1798. In fact, I saw Tom Homan. He gave a great interview where he had a total mic drop moment. Tom Homan he's Mr. Mic Drop in my opinion. But Tom Homan looked at a reporter who said, well, are we really going to apply a law that's over 200 years old? And he said, the Constitution's over 200 years old. We use that every day. He turned around and walked off. Gotta love Homan, man.
And then there's the clip of him eating the apple.
Oh, God, still love that.
He does not care.
I'm so glad he's on our side.
Yes.
That being said, we're in a position right now where virtually everything we try to do to deport the bad guys, which that's the prime focus right now, illegal aliens / bad guys, is being enjoined by the courts. Got a piece here from the National Pulse. U.S. deports more violent illegals, including Trinidad gang members. So it happened again. By the way, this is Dateline today. The Trump administration deported another 10 violent illegal immigrants to El Salvador this past weekend, where they will be held at the country's CCOT prison, which is used to house dangerous criminals and gang members. The impact of this is the new 10 deportees will join over 200 other violent illegal immigrant criminals the Trump administration removed from the United States and sent to El Salvador as federal immigration officials continue to enact Trump's mass deportation policies. All right, so the bottom line is we got a great relationship with El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele. He says he's going to keep housing these deportees in his country's CCOT super prison. And he's all in. And by the way, I got an audio clip. I'm going to go ahead and call it. Let's do that before the break. I'm going to call up audio clip 1. This is El Salvador's President Bukele on liberating millions of people by putting bad guys in jail. Play it.
And we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it. And we actually turned the murder capital of the world, that was the journalists call it, right? Murder capital of the world, into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, you know, sometimes they say that we imprisoned thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So, you know, like...
That's very good. Who gave him that line? Do you think I can use that?
Yes. And in fact, Mr. President, you have 350 million people to liberate. Yeah. But to liberate 350 million people, you have to imprison some. You know, that's the way it works, right? You cannot just, free the criminals and think crime is going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime and the end of terrorism. And it can be done. I mean, you're doing it already. And I'm sure that people have seen the change in the streets. A long way to go because you're just initiating your second term. But it's clear that, with the numbers at the border, even in Democrat-run cities, they get a help from the work you're doing. So I'm really happy to be here, honored.
All right, that was President El Salvador's President Bukele on in the Oval Office, meeting with the cabinet to include the president, and I love the line, and apparently President Trump did too. I love the line. He said, "It wasn't about imprisoning thousands; it was about liberating millions." What he's basically saying was, his country, El Salvador, was considered to be the murder capital of the world, and it is now one of the safest in the Western Hemisphere. Why? Because they had a major crackdown, and he put the bad guys in jail.
Yeah, Bukele literally has the playbook for it.
He does,
and it's putting people in jail. Like it's not as complex as the left makes it out to be.
Yeah,
it's pretty simple.
Yep. Totally. All right, we got way more on this. Can we deport anybody? I'll tell you all about it after the break. I got stuff here. By the way, I got a brand spanking new story about Judge Boasberg trying to hold the Trump administration in contempt. Well, I take issue with that. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades. So I'm looking at a story right now that came out just this afternoon, like right before I went on the air. Alicia here in the office printed it out for me. I've already had time to highlight it. Fox News is the copy that I got, Dateline this afternoon. A federal judge said Wednesday that he has found probable cause to hold the Trump administration in contempt for failing to return 2 planes deporting migrants to El Salvador last month, a major update that comes as tensions between the Trump administration and judiciary have reached a fever pitch. This is U.S. District Judge James Boasberg. And as one of our texters just texted a minute ago, absolutely correct. I'm looking at another story on ABC News right now that was datelined April 8th. Today's what? The 6th? So 8 days ago. 8 days ago, Judge Boasberg, the same judge, was told by the Supreme Court that the Trump administration had a right to deport under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. And he therefore, he's also told in that same Supreme Court order that he did not have jurisdiction over the matter. So now he's issuing a potential contempt finding for what occurred. Here's what he's doing. The best I can tell, and I don't think he has jurisdiction. I don't think you can issue contempt when someone is operating within their rights because you lack jurisdiction. Because a jurisdictional, as an attorney, I'll just tell you, a jurisdictional issue is a crushing moment in a case. You do not have a case if the court does not have jurisdiction. There's only 2 kinds of jurisdiction. One's called in rem and one's called in personam. And what that basically means is jurisdiction over the matter or jurisdiction over the person. In this case, they said he had neither. So lacking jurisdiction means he had no authority then to act on the case. So how then can he penalize people on a case he had no authority to act on? I don't know the answer to that. I am bumfuddled by this. But yeah, in the meantime, Dateline today, the court ultimately determines the government's actions on that day demonstrated a willful disregard for its order sufficient for the court to conclude that probable cause exists to find the government in criminal contempt. I guess he's just mad. I guess he's like, well, until you knew that I didn't have jurisdiction, you should have listened to what I had to say. And they're like, well, we already knew you didn't have jurisdiction, so you can go pound sand. Anyway, Boasberg instructed the government to now file additional declarations in his court by April 23rd, so about a week. Failure to do so, the court said, would refer the matter for potential prosecution. What? Here's how Trump gets around that. He says, I take full responsibility. I was the authority. Guess what? He can't be prosecuted. He's president of the United States. So just go take a flying leap, Judge. So, oh God. And by the way, the judge wants to know not only the acts that resulted in the non-compliance with his order, he wants to know exactly who it was that made the decision. Well, now, Trump administration wasted little time responding by saying we plan to seek immediate appellate relief and saying the president's 100% committed to getting criminals, illegal aliens off our streets. But here's the thing, y'all. This is so lame. Listen, if they were out there scooping up people because of their religious affiliation, if they were out there gathering up actual citizens of the United States and shipping them to a foreign country, if they were taking people even who had green cards and legal standing and just scarfing them up in big rallies and shipping them off to a foreign land, I would have a problem with that too. I don't care which side did it, but they're not. They're picking up people who are already here illegally and who are known to be criminals. It's not hard. Not only that, J.D. Vance has got some opinions on this. When we get back from the break, I'm going to tell you what he had to say, but J.D. Vance has got a theory on how we, or not a theory, but a suggestion on how we should handle these ridiculous arguments, that say we should go get that man back out of that prison down in El Salvador and bring him back here. Because if that's their plan, Vice President J.D. Vance has a notion about what it really means. I'll tell you about it when we get back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. Can we deport anybody? Anybody at all? My God.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. We talk about can we deport anyone? And judges who are determined to not let it happen, and then judges who appear to be mad that they can't tell you not to put them. So Judge Boasberg has now issued a statement saying that he's intent upon finding the Trump administration in contempt of court for not turning the planes around in midair. And yet we also know that he's been declared by the Supreme Court of the United States to not have jurisdiction. I'm curious how he's even able to do the contempt order potentially if he has already been told he had no jurisdiction to begin with. I got one call on the line and I'm about to have a second. So Dana from Alabama is on right now. Dana, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Phil?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Well, like I told JP, it's two different things. But the first one is this Judge Boasberg thing. I'm in total agreement with y'all. I was raised and taught in civics and everything in school that the Supreme Court is a supreme law of the land. If the Supreme Court has already shut him down on this, I don't understand where he thinks he's got any kind of standing whatsoever to file any kind of thing.
I don't either, and I practice law, and I'm still trying to figure out how he thinks he can do that. But yeah.
Well, and he also, he needs to be disbarred and kicked off anyway for all of this stuff he's got going on in the background with his daughter's connections and everything else. It's a bunch of baloney.
Well, and I tell you, one of the worst ones though is another judge who is an absolute female activist, and she ruled on cases regarding transgenders in the military, and you think she would have recused, but she didn't. I don't know if we're ever going to see him kicked off the bench because we disagree, but I think there can certainly be a complaint if someone has valid claim to show he he had predispositions.
Well, exactly. And like I said, if the Supreme Court has already shut him down on even filing the stuff to start with, I don't understand where he thinks he's got standing for any of it.
I don't either.
But
go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to comment on real quick was this Democrat congressman that's going to El Salvador.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if he has seen I saw on X this morning, it was posted yesterday, I believe, the president of El Salvador has already put out a statement and said, if you come to this country for political reasons and start trying to raise political crap, I'm paraphrasing, you could be incarcerated.
You got to watch that political crap. That'll get you every time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. His place said, if you come to our country and you start doing things that are politically motivated or anything like that you can be charged and you can be incarcerated.
Well, you might fool around and find out, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around.
Well, thank you, Dana. I got to take another call real quick, but I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
All right, y'all have a great day.
All right, thank you. Go and get the other one on the call as soon as you can, and give me a thumbs up when you're ready. But yeah, this is listen. This whole situation is really something. And for the judge to say that he's not only going to find someone in contempt, but he wants names. He's not just saying, I find this to be contemptible and I will hold the attorneys. No, he wants names. He wants a head to be hung on his wall. And I don't know that we can. I really think the Trump administration is going to wind up resisting this, and they'll be fine. I also think that all that Trump has to do is say, it was me. So, and then what are you going to do? He's president. You can't prosecute the president. But right now on the phone, I've got former U.S. Attorney Jay Town, who is also, by the way, a Marine Corps JAG and an all-around good dude. And he's on the phone right now. Jay Town, how you doing?
I am well, sir. How are you?
Good. This is spur of the moment. Thank you so much for just being available. I had a legal question. I sent it to you, and you said, you want me to call in? Here you are.
It's just easier to call in than text, man. Sometimes that's how it is.
Well, listen, man, what do you think about this whole situation with Judge Boasberg, who the Supreme Court said about 10 days ago had no jurisdiction over the deportation under the Alien Enemies Act to seek out prison in El Salvador. Today comes out and says, on the same thing, because you didn't turn the planes around, I'm going to hold you all in contempt and I want names. How can he do that?
Well, I mean, he can write down on a piece of paper anything he wants to. At the end of the day, though, the federal government is going to give him very little, if anything. Look, the order itself says if you don't prosecute this contempt, which remember, Article 3 courts are not prosecutors; they're judges. They have no ability to dictate who's prosecuted and who isn't, at least initially in the predication. And so, this is completely an Article 2 function. He said, well, if this DOJ won't do it, I'll appoint a special prosecutor to do it. A power he doesn't have. It's just so he wants to be literally the judge in a contempt case is the jury. So he wants to be the prosecutor, the judge, and the jury, and he's already indicated how he's going to rule. So I guess he'd have to recuse. But here's the deal: is that he makes a lot of factual, just so many factual errors in what he has stated in this order. He forgets the fact that most of what he was so upset about was his oral order to turn the planes around, which he has. One, there's no such thing as an oral injunction.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court and the D.C. Circuit have both said, if you're not going to write it down, it doesn't exist. And the problem he has is that he gave an oral order to turn the planes around and don't let any more take off. But then in his written order, he didn't say anything about that. Now, which one, as a lawyer, as a client, right? If you're a law-abiding citizen, which one are you going to go by?
Oh, yeah.
The written
order.
Exactly right. And maybe he had a change of heart. Maybe he had a change of mind. I don't know, but you didn't write it down, Judge. And, oh, by the way, those were Title VIII deportees. Those are not Title 50 pursuant to the Alien Enemies Act. Why? Because they were. And that's all you get to know. They all had orders of removal, and we sent them all home. And I'm the President of the United States or the Secretary of Homeland Security or the Secretary of State, and that's my job. It's not yours. And you got judges like Feeney's in Maryland with this guy. They're just revealing today, apparently he used to beat up on his wife, and which was one of the reasons why he was not granted asylum as well. I'm talking about the MS-13 member that is in El Salvador right now, his home country. We sent him home. We gave him a free ticket home, right? A government expense. You and I paid for it, Phil. But now you got Boasberg, who's been wrong throughout this whole thing. He's been embarrassed by the Supreme Court.
Yep.
He's been embarrassed by the Department of Justice. He's been embarrassed by the President Bukele of El Salvador, right? I mean, it's been great. But in his order, let me just give you a couple of examples of what he has written in his order that is factually incorrect. One, worse, boasts by defendants intimated that they had defied the court's order deliberately and gleefully. Now, what he's referring to there is President Bukele's, which was attached to one of the government's motions. Bukele said they ain't coming back.
Yep.
Well, okay, they're in my country. They're in my jail. I'm the president of El Salvador. I feel like I have a say here, district court judge in Washington, D.C., right? And that's just how it's going to be. And what we've learned today also is that in this Maryland and D.C. case kind of go together, that we are only paying El Salvador to house Tren de Aragua members, not MS-13 members. So we don't have any sort of custodial control over any of the MS-13 members, which signifies to me that we have no control over Abrego Garcia. And I know I'm toggling back and forth. I'm sorry to your audience. But really, when you have these judges across the country, whether they're in Massachusetts, whether they're in Maryland, D.C., Northern California, it doesn't matter. Right here in Huntsville, we don't have judges in Huntsville to do this. I wish all these lawsuits were in the Northern District of Alabama because President Trump would be allowed to be president.
Yeah, exactly.
But he would, and we have great judges here who I respect dearly. and there's several seats open on the federal bench that President Trump is going to be able to appoint whoever he appoints. I hope they are much like the folks that we have on the bench now. But Judge Boasberg can find whoever he wants in contempt. There's no way to enforce it. There's no legal remedy available to Judge Boasberg any longer for these TDA members. He was told that this is a habeas matter. You can't bring it under the Administrative Procedures Act, which he tried to do, which he encouraged the ACO to do. It was filed as a habeas petition, and he said, hey, if you do that, I know the law. I'm going to pretend I don't, but I know the law, and they're going to say you have to bring that where they're detained. They're in Texas. So why don't you do it under APA? Well, you can't prosecute an immigration claim under the APA.
So the bottom line here, the bottom line here, brothers, it looks like what we got is a case of judicial sour grapes, and it makes him look small that he's issuing these proclamations like this. Well, yes, well, he is small. I mean, I'm not pulling punches on any of these judges any longer. One of the other facts that he said is that these non-citizens were removable solely on the basis of the proclamation, and they were transferred out of the U.S. In violation of the injunction. Well, once again, Title 8 and Title 50 have both been written down so this judge can read them. Title 8 is where our immigration laws live, and if you have a removable order under Title 8, then I can send you wherever I want to under Title 8. Title 50 is where the Alien Enemies Act lives. That's sort of our military authority and our national security authorities. And that's not how those people were removed. Yeah. And so, I mean, it just happened to be. Now, we can do it, and we will do it, and we have done it. But what they're saying is if you're going to do that, they are entitled to an hour in court to show you that, hey, I am not a TDA member, or I'm not the guy you think I am. And I'm fine with that, frankly. You could do 500 of them at once. You could do it all on the papers. You don't have to have a hearing, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You could just say, tell me in your papers why this isn't, Mr. Town, and why he's not a member of TDA, and then government, you respond, and then I'll just rule. Well, we caught him, and he had a flag that said "I heart TDA" and a membership card in his pocket, and his ID said Mr. Town on it. Okay, well, that's clear and convincing evidence, and we don't have to do it beyond a reasonable doubt. You gone. So, look, this is all too smart by half by these liberals, because here's why. The powers of the President of the United States are at some point going to be sussed out. And Article 2 is going to be very deliberately and meticulously identified, these powers by the United States Supreme Court. And then you are going to see, like rocket fuel, this administration do everything that they've been stalled in doing by all of these lawsuits and temporary restraining orders and injunction suits. And they are going to then just take off, and we are going to see millions of people deported, millions of grants, hundreds of billions of dollars in grants stalled and taken back, and that money clawed back and given back to the public fisc. This is all going to be great for the president. They've had a legal plan all along. I'm jealous, because I don't know I would have thought of all of this. There's some really smart people in this administration, especially in the counsel's office in the White House, and they knew this was going to happen, and that's why their filings are like just a couple of hours after the complaints or the petitions, because they know what's happening. This DOJ is doing a great job. Pam Bondi's great. Todd Blanche is great, and they're going to win. It's going to eat up this year. Hey. But once they do, it's going to be rocket fuel. Hey, and listen, brother, I got to leave it there. I ran long, but I got to run to a break. But I appreciate you jumping in there with your background and expertise, and we'll just listen. We'll see where it plays out. But I think you're right. I think you nailed it, and I think it is sour grapes. But Jay Town, former U.S. attorney, thanks so much for your time, buddy.
Thanks, Phil.
See you. Bye-bye. Well, that was huge. That was an unexpected call, and I agree with him. I think what we're looking at here is the judge has got it wrong from the get-go. And what we're looking at now is pretty soon we're going to get it all cleaned up. Good, smart folks, the Trump administration got it planned out. And then, by golly, we're going to be deporting millions. I love it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just pulling pins on the truth grenade. That's right. Dropping truth bombs everywhere, man. By the way, there's something going on at the White House. I don't know what's happening, but we keep getting one of those teasers that comes on saying, coming soon, White House press briefing, and all it says is with special guest. It doesn't say who the special guest is. So you look that up, JP. In the meantime, listen, I got so much more. I didn't even get to all of it related to the deportation question. But I will say this. I thought J.D. Vance made a great point. Vice President Vance was talking about Dateline Today, Fox News, about the fact that we got the left constantly trying to stymie the ability to deport. And he says, when the media and the far left obsess over an MS-13 gang member and demand that he be returned to the United States for a third deportation hearing, what they're really saying is they want the vast majority of illegal aliens to stay here permanently. That's the straw man argument I was making earlier. That basically what they're using is the one to try and undermine the whole. They're using one example. They believe, which I think they're incorrect, but I think they think they've got something. We'll show you. We'll go down to that CCOP prison in El Salvador place, and we'll go in and we'll get him back, and we'll make sure. And he's just a father from Maryland. He's an illegal alien. He was a member of MS-13. He's an El Salvador citizen who's now been repatriated to his home country, and his home country has put him in prison. And by the way, that's where he's going to stay. If he did come back, all he would do is have a quick hearing and be deported again. It's not like he's coming back here to have anything other than maybe a hearing at best. Because Caroline Leavitt said herself, there is no reality in which he comes back here to get a hearing to just go back to life in the United States. It's not going to happen. Now, I look at that and think, yeah, spot on. But J.D. Vance points out, here's a useful test. You ask the people weeping over the lack of due process what precisely they propose for dealing with Biden's millions and millions of illegals. And with reasonable resource and administrative judge constraints, does their solution allow us to deport at least a few million a year? If the answer you get is no, then they've given their game away and they don't really want border security. Perfect. Ask them, what is your plan? What he's saying there is, I hear you. Guess what? We got a problem. What's your solution? If they don't have one, it means they don't want one. Coming right back, we'll take text messages and wrap this one up. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Have mercy. And we're back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all are talking about this show. Goes from Huntsville back all the way over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border, what is now called again Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. A lot of doings. I'll get some text messages. I'm going to wrap up this section on can we deport? And I think the short answer is yes, we can. Absolutely, we can. I mean, the Trump administration, I've got a piece here from the Daily Caller. The Trump administration argues it's not going to have to return that suspected MS-13 gangbanger. They're not. In fact, Caroline Leavitt spoke about that. I'm going to call up audio 2, man. So audio clip number 2. This is Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who was asked about this Mr. Abrego Garcia and whether or not he should have to be returned. What are we going to do about him? Here's her answer.
Still going off the El Salvador questions. Yesterday in the Oval Office, administration officials made it very clear that El Salvador is responsible for Mr. Abrego Garcia, yet El Salvador's president said we're not going to do anything with him. So my question is, who is responsible for this man and where he's going to end up?
Well, no. First of all, President Bukele said that he is not going to smuggle a foreign terrorist back into the United States of America, as many in this room in the Democrat Party seemingly want him to do. Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country. And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result. There is never going to be a world in which this is an individual who's going to live a peaceful life in Maryland because he is a foreign terrorist and a MS-13 gang member. Not only have we confirmed that, President Bukele yesterday in the Oval Office confirmed that as well. So he went back to his home country where he will face consequences for his gang affiliation and his engagement in human trafficking. I'm not sure what is so difficult about this for everyone in the media to understand, and it's appalling, truly appalling, that there has been so much time covering this alleged human trafficker and this gang member, MS-13 gang member. It's truly striking to me.
I mean, she ain't playing. The administration ain't playing. Even President Bukele ain't playing, and the press can't let it go. Because I'm telling you, this is their straw man. This is what they need.
They needed something like this to be Maryland father accidentally sent packet, not the MS-13 member.
And by the way, I'll be honest. When I first heard the headlines, I was like, "Oh crap." Did we really? I mean, did they round up some guy off the street who's got an American citizenship? No. In fact, I read up on him today. I read a liberal website today that was in defense of him that still said things that were egregious, like the fact that not only was he was detained in 2019 after being here several years illegally, was being held in an ICE detention center, decided to marry his girlfriend while he was in the detention center. They literally passed rings through the hole in the glass to each other. And then he got out on ICE detainer, and they decided to scoop him back up and reject him and send him back because he had been granted, quote unquote, asylum by the Biden administration. Come on.
Yeah.
So, now all talks about whether or not Congressman, is it Van Hollen, is going to go down there, or Senator Van Hollen from Maryland, go down there and see his constituent.
Well, he's there right now. He's in El Salvador right now.
He is there?
He is.
So he's down. So, okay. So
Yes.
what happened? Did he get to see him?
Well, apparently not. He was not granted a meeting.
So he flew down there for nothing.
Yeah. His quote is, "I won't stop trying to release Kilmore Garcia. I can assure the president and vice president I may be the first U.S. senator to visit El Salvador on this issue, but there will be more and more members of Congress coming." Gosh, you know what?
That's good.
You know what? What's frustrating about this, Phil, is all the carbon emissions that have been put in the air from all them flying down to El Salvador.
Don't you try to cross-pollinate our issues.
With our taxpayer money. It's really a shame. It's what they're doing to the earth.
But you know what, though? I mean, listen, in fact, I saw it It was on a tweet. Here it is. Hang on a second. I think you even mentioned this to me before the show. Cory Booker is one of the ones who's also speaking out on this. Spartacus is speaking out. And somebody whose name is, and I'm mangling it, I'm sure, is Siju Wang, said, I was a New Jersey resident, Senator Cory Booker's constituent. I was jailed in Iran as an American hostage. Senator Booker never advocated for my release and refused to speak for my wife. Senator Booker is a hypocrite. And then you look at, okay, how about the actual American citizens that are still being held by Hamas? Why hasn't Van Hollen flown over there to see them? This is a straw man.
It is. And by the way, they're not stupid. They know that they're not going to be granted a meeting. They know nothing's going to come out of their visits, but they're getting demolished so much that they need the most extravagant grandstanding as possible to distract from the winning that Trump's doing. And that's just for show. And we're paying for them to actually work on issues, not go down to El Salvador for meaningless trips.
Well, I think Senator Van Hollen from Maryland looks like a goofball right now. I mean, just anyway. I will say this, though. There have been a few setbacks, and we're going to have to keep working through them. This is a Dateline 2 days ago. Fox News. Judge blocks Trump from revoking the legal status for 530,000 plus migrants who flew into the U.S. via Biden's CHNV program. That's the one that had Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. All you had to do was say you're scared to live there anymore, and they sent you a plane ticket and flew you in with no due process. You got to, don't pass go, don't collect. You just went straight to it. And the Trump administration has now terminated that process. Like, we're not doing this anymore, and we're sending all y'all back. The fact that you got to get a free plane ride over here is of naught to us. And yet now we have another judge. Judge Indira Talwani, an Obama appointee, wrote that each one of those migrants needs to have an individualized case-by-case review. Stop it. They need more due process to get rid of them than they had to bring them in. And that's what it boils down to.
But then Biden has the executive authority to enforce that. But Trump doesn't have the executive authority to
revoke it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, it was not congressionally mandated. It was not like this is legislative action. It was not based upon constitutional grounds. It was a complete violation of national security. And the Biden administration did it on a whim. Phil, that's more than whimsical. No, it really wasn't. It was part of the overall plan. In fact, they even said it's because they were trying to speed up the process to get some of these people in. Really? Well, just let the inside words become the outside words, I guess. We did have ICE nabbed 18 illegal aliens in a massive Social Security fraud bust, which I was just proud of that. It's not a deportation, but I liked it. So I brought it up because it's my show.
Fair enough.
And then lastly, here's something interesting. As we are looking at deporting on a regular basis, trying to get millions out of our country, I am not aware of this. I did not know this existed. But there's apparently something, it's like a 60-foot wide strip of land that runs across the borders of California, Arizona, and New Mexico. And it's called the Roosevelt Reservation, believe it or not. I've never heard of this. The Roosevelt Reservation. So that makes it federal land. And so Trump has decided that the Department of the Interior, which has controlled the Roosevelt Reservation for all these many decades, he's going to give it to the Department of Defense, meaning that they can then militarize it if they want to. They can make it like any other military installation. They can patrol it with military vehicles. They don't have to have any federal authorities granted to them specially because the Roosevelt Reservation, which is literally only 60 feet wide. I mean, it's like as wide as this building we're in right now, and it just runs the length of the border between 3 states and Mexico. And they're just going to go ahead and say, yeah, we're going to militarize that. Listen, the level of innovation that we're seeing right now in the efforts to secure the border, I go back to what Trump said during his State of the State address, or State of the Union. He said, Biden said you couldn't do this without legislative action. He said, you didn't need new legislation. You just needed a new president. That's where we are.
They wanted new legislation to pack a bunch of other crap in it. It wasn't necessary.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also to codify a safer and slower way of doing things. Mm-hmm. And Trump's like, screw that. I'm going to militarize the border. I'm going to get rid of millions at a time. I'm going to make you try and stop me. And then he's going to appeal it to the Supreme Court and find out that the majority of it he can just do without anybody saying boo about it, because that is vested in the executive branch. All right, that was a whole lot. I got a ton of text messages I'm going to get caught up on. Some now, some after the break. Don't forget, coming up too, beginning of the next hour, the Grand Council with Jeff Poore and Dale Jackson. By the way, today is Wednesday, so my monologue, the right philosophy.
Your podcast.
I do op-eds, monologues, podcasts, and radio. But my latest podcast, The Right Philosophy. Mr. Production Manager, did it indeed come out today?
It did indeed, yes.
What time?
10 a.m. this morning.
Okay, so 10 a.m. this morning, the latest edition of the Right Philosophy video podcast came out. I filmed that, by the way. I'm real proud of it. I film it in my study at home, and it's sort of a labor of love. I get a chance to put that together every week, film it over the weekend, goes into production, comes out, bam, on Wednesdays like magic. I don't know how you guys push those buttons and make those things happen, but I'm glad you do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the bottom line is all our stuff is available right now. You can go see it on podcasts. I mean, on any podcast format. You can listen to it there. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on our website, rightsidemedia.org. But that is the latest podcast out, and more coming for the week. Lots of doings. Lots of doings. Take me to a break there, JP. We'll take that break. We'll come right back. And then, by golly, I'm going to catch up on these text messages because you guys are some awesome audiences. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Yeah, I'm saying, making common sense like a superpower. A bunch of text messages. Let me jump in there. You guys are awesome. So Mike from Florence has said, you know you're on the right side when you hear Phil Williams say y'all in one of the commercials. It's true. There he gets good. Gary MS from Huntsville says, am I wrong? To have your civil rights violated, you have to at least be a citizen of the United States? Not necessarily, because, you know, there are certain freedoms that are allowed by being here, but the rights of due process are not always applicable under certain aspects of the law, and the due process is suspended in the event of the Alien Enemies Act, and that's because they are considered to be like military combatants almost, POW style. So a bit different there. Brand spanking new in the text line. Shane from Harvest. Shane, we're glad you're with us. He said, who's paying for this sympathetic senator's trip to El Salvador? And I would dare say that is not him personally. I think it's coming out of taxpayers. Now, each one of them does have an office budget for travel. They're afforded the ability to fly back and forth to their constituencies, to do certain things. They've got an expense account to work with. So I'm assuming he used some of that. What you got to watch for is occasionally, and Nancy Pelosi would do this sometimes, occasionally they would make a demand for military flight. And I'm doubting he got that on this one. Usually that's for trips to places which are considered to be either austere or have some risk involved. But I think he flew commercial, and I bet he paid for it out of his office, which is technically taxpayer dollars. Bruce from Springville says, Boasberg, that's Judge Boasberg, and the press are not sour grapes about the deportations. They're used toilet paper. Oh, Bruce. Gary from Leicester saying, isn't it hilarious that the left is only interested in one person out of thousands that have been deported? Yup. But that's, like I said, that's their straw man. They're capitalizing on it because they got nothing for the rest. They got nothing. They got no arguments. They can't fight it. So they found one they think they can grab hold of and make something out of it. Thomas from Athens says, the MS-13 scum was recently lauded by his wife, Ms. Alvarez, who has collected $162,000 in a GoFundMe account. But she had just years earlier in their marriage gotten 2 different restraining orders against the scumbag for his domestic violence. I had not heard that. Is that, you seen the reports on that?
Yeah, and the next text is actually a link to the story about that.
Russell from Rural Route 1. Russell from Rural Route 1 sends me a link to an article, sure enough, saying the Post-Millennial is reporting that this MS-13 guy, there were restraining orders against him for violence against his wife in 2021. Wow. Just wow. You know, but hey, we need him back. He's very important to all of us.
Productive citizen.
Yes. Actually not a citizen.
Fair point.
Resident. That's why they keep calling him a resident. Jeff from Indiana says, I think this judge ought to be arrested for insurrection, with a smiley face after it. He said he's trying to take over the executive branch when he has no authority to do so. It's the same thing that happened during the 2020 election when people with no jurisdiction to change election laws did so unconstitutionally. Blending of the issues, but I would not disagree. Brian from Decatur says, I voted for a president to make executive decisions, not a judge. I don't mind checks and balances. This ain't that. Handyman from Caddo says, sounds like this judge's career needs to come to an end at once. Well, I mean, if he wants to retire, that's fine. Federal district court judges are actually appointed for life or good cause, and that's the important thing to remember here. By the way, we have figured out now who the special guest is at the press briefing at the White House. Her name is Patty Marin. She's the mother of Rachel Marin, who was murdered by an illegal alien. So I think they're tired of having the press question the illegal alien deportation thing, and she's now speaking in what looks like a very emotional moment to the press. And wow, how about that? Chris from Starrett, Alabama says, Phil, I was in El Salvador over 30 years ago. It isn't the same anymore. He said homicide was 83% in 2017 and 1.9% in 2024. Wow, good Lord. They did something right by cracking down on MS-13 and Barrio 18. Trump is doing something right, and the Democrats can't stand it. Who wants a safe country anyway, he asked. This guy does, he says. All right, you guys are amazing as an audience. Listen, the end result of all this, here's my opinion. The end result of all of this is that we did indeed elect a president to make executive decisions that involved this border. I do believe that what we've got right now is a president who is willing to act on what he said he would do. We knew all along he was going to do this, and he has planned all along to do this, and he has the people to help him do this. If you remember back during the campaign season, the two biggest issues, and they went back and forth in whatever poll you were looking at, whether it was going to be one or two, the two biggest issues were always the economy and border control. The economy and border, basically illegal immigration. We voted for this. This was one of the driving forces in getting more people to vote to cause Trump to win both the popular vote and the Electoral College. So I absolutely believe that what we're looking at is exactly what we voted for. I don't know of any Republicans, and I don't even know any Democrats, who are like, I'm all for illegal immigration. I want more of it. Nobody's out there saying that. Do I believe in due process? I certainly do. Do I want to make sure that human rights are not violated? I certainly do. But you know what? I also agree that the black letter law, as agreed by the Supreme Court of the United States, says that the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 still applies. So by God, if we're going to say that Al-Qaeda can be a non-state actor that's a terrorist organization, then so can a drug cartel that kills hundreds of thousands of people with fentanyl, or a Tren de Aragua who comes in and takes over whole sections of apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. If you're going to be those guys, then guess what? We're going to be that country that says we will defend our own. This is our house, and we will defend our house. So yeah, I absolutely believe we voted for every bit of this. All right, coming up here in just 1 minute, we've got our what do you got? I'm sorry. We would come up here in just a couple of minutes. We've got the Grand Council with Jeff Poor, Dale Jackson, and little old me, where we opine on different issues of the day. We ping each other with questions, and then there's some breaking news that we'll get to. I'm going to find out more about what Miss Rachel Marin is having, or Patty Marin is having to say at the White House press briefing, because I find that to be rather galvanizing just looking at it. I'm thinking this looks like one that the press better not speak out of turn, because she might come across that podium. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on Hump Day. And you know what that means? It's the middle of the week. Therefore, we play the camel at the beginning of the show. And oh, by the way, we do a thing called the Grand Council at the top of the third hour. So let me just jump on in here. What I'm doing is bringing in my friends for the Grand Council, hailing from the southern part of the states, FM Talk 106.5, host of the Jeff Poor Show. Oh, by the way, editor-in-chief for 1819 News. Also works with Breitbart and Lanyap and some other stuff like that. Jeff Poor, are you there?
I am present.
You are indeed, and we're glad of it. All right, looking northward then for the other part of the state, from 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN, Cumulus Broadcasting's host of the Dale Jackson Show. Oh, by the way, does a gig on TV. Oh, by the way, also works with Yellowhammer News. Dale Jackson, are you there? I'm glad of it. All right, I pronounce a quorum. Hit it, JP.
Assemble the Grand Council.
All right, quorum being pronounced, we're all in. Jeff Poor, you go first. What do you got, man?
I know it's there's 7 or 8 days left of legislative session, and a lot can happen between now and then. But the rumor in the hallways is tomorrow they're going to start cloturing in the Senate, which will probably mean everything is said and done that's out there. But I was thinking about this. If you had to grade this session, what would you give it?
If you had to grade this session?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a C- session. I don't really know what came out of it. Nothing really struck me as being A, controversial, B, meaningful. I mean, I look at it as the session in which they had surplus budgets, but they still did away with tax relief that they had already put in place. So basically, they're taking food off people's tables. I look at it as the year they tried to do gambling through the back door in local legislation, and I also look at it as the year when you really can't figure out who's in charge or what the plan is. So it's been a little bit tepid. The one thing I will say that's been a high point was when Garland Gudger said, "We ain't doing gambling, stop talking about it," and I really appreciated that. Dale, your thoughts?
I give it about a C. Nothing special, nothing particularly outrageously bad or anything like that. Anyone will be bragging about, except to say we took an extra penny off your sales taxes on food a little bit sooner. That seems to be the only thing they'll hang their hat on. Other than that, not much.
I mean, there really is. I mean, you're down there a lot, Jeff. I'm assuming you're down there today. What do you see? I mean, so Dale and I are both putting them in the C category. Where are you?
I don't know, C- maybe. I'm hesitant to say D, but I can lean into D. You can convince me of that. It's a lost session, and it's the third year of a quadrennium. Senator, isn't that the big year? Isn't it the second and third year of the quadrennium when you really do something remarkable? And there was really nothing there. Now, look, I'm not one of these guys that needs to be cheerleading the legislature to pass a bunch of laws or whatever. We don't really need that. But I think there's a lot of things they can do as far as conservative policy goes that they just kind of didn't do it. I don't even give them credit for the grocery tax. Yeah. They did that already.
Yeah.
They're doing it again, and it was going to come off anyway. So you don't get like a victory lap twice.
No, you don't, and I totally agree with you. I also saw this being a year.
I agree with that. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, but I think we're all saying the same thing. It was definitely a very tepid, lukewarm session, and I look at too. It's a session when, for reasons that I cannot explain, Governor Ivey got like her agenda items passed without even fully declaring them as agenda items. It just the whole session just felt like you guys are like sort of 1 foot in and 1 foot out the whole time. That's the way it felt. All right, enough of that. All right, Dale, you're up. What do you got, buddy?
Okay, you're a former senator, recovering politician.
I am.
I'm sure there were times when people were doing things you thought were stupid.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you're going to run out and say it, but man, National Democrats are having members of Congress run down to El Salvador to save a wife-beating MS-13 member from a prison there and failing. Is there not like a come on man caucus inside the Democratic Party that can say, these idiots aren't with us. This is incredibly stupid 2080 nonsense. What are we doing?
Well,
where are the sane Democrats?
Well, you know what's crazy is when you look at it, you've got Rahm Emanuel and James Carville that are the two biggest. These are guys from the Clinton administration, and they are the two most vocal guys out there about stop the madness and get back on message. But when you got Cory Booker and Chris Van Hollen talking about running down, and by the way, Van Hollen went down to El Salvador for no reason because they wouldn't let him in the prison, which we all knew was the case. So yeah, what they've done is they've created a straw man argument. They've got nothing. They got nothing else helpful. They don't know what to do. They have no plan. They really don't want to have to refute Biden's agenda because it was Biden. And so what they're doing is they're grabbing hold of the one dude, the MS-13 wife beater, and they're claiming that he's some kind of model citizen father, and they want him back. It's nuts. Jeff, weigh in.
It's almost like they're playing for the far left lane in the 2028 presidential race or something, because I don't think that's going to be an option for these guys necessarily. They'll have probably everybody vying for the moderate lane. And then right now we're doing the far left, but all this stuff, it's all they know is the playbook is bash Trump, and that didn't work. And they threw everything out. So I question I question the wisdom, even if you think what Van Hollen did was the right thing to do. If that's fine if he's doing it for that reason, but I'm pretty sure he's doing it because the former DNC chairman is doing this because he wants to, or the DSCC or whatever it is, chairman is doing it because he's trying to rack up some political points against the Trump administration.
That's all it is. That's all they can do is, there's an old saying in the practice of law that if the law is in your favor, argue the law. If the facts are in your favor, argue the facts. If nothing's in your favor, just bang your hand on the podium and do the best you can. That's all they've got right now. They're banging their hand on the podium. They got nothing. All right, speaking of got nothing, story broke today that Senator Tommy Tuberville may have competition. Kyle Sweetser, the alleged former Republican who spoke at the DNC and advocated for Kamala Harris, has now announced he will run as a Democrat against Senator Tommy Tuberville. Should we fear for Tuberville's political future? Jeff?
Obviously, no. It's like the AL.com candidate. Might as well not even. I mean, the only people who are going to be paying attention to this guy, these guys are going to be spending their high-end beer money and have to drink Natty Light and to give to this guy. But that's all I see. There's no audience for that.
Natty Light. All right, Dale, what do you think?
If he's going to run against Tommy Tuberville, he better start running for governor, because that, I think, is what's going to happen. And you know what that means? He's the front runner for the Senate race. Oh, no.
Because ain't nobody else in it. Oh,
yeah.
We'll see. I think the whole thing's ridiculous. I mean, I do agree that the Democrats got to try. But I look at this guy and think, if that's the best you got somebody who's never done anything. No one's ever heard of him except that he switched affiliations to go endorse Kamala Harris, who even their own party doesn't like and was embarrassed by. I'm thinking, man.
I thought he was running as a Republican.
No, he says he's running as a Democrat in the article I read. Am I wrong?
Okay, I missed that part. too.
Jeff, is
he?
He's the front runner for the Democratic nomination.
He's a what, Jeff?
He's a Democrat.
Oh, yeah.
He was a Democrat.
Yeah, in fact, the bylaws of the state Republican Party anyway wouldn't let him run because he just finished advocating for Kamala Harris. So the bylaws would have kicked him off the ballot anyway. It's nuts. It's fun. We'll see where his fundraising goes, but I don't see him taking the top of the ticket. All right, we're taking a break. That's round one. That was fast. This goes so fast. All right, Jeff Poor, Dale Jackson, and just little old me. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, just plain right. Pulling pins on truth grenades. All right, we're going right back to round 2 of the Grand Council with Jeff Poor and Dale Jackson. I think I said Jeff Poor was first in line. So, Jeff, what do you got?
Well, let me go. I may have asked this already last week. I can't remember. But looking at the situation with the tariffs, and you've got to kind of like it the way Trump's not necessarily handling it, but sort of the way he's weathering the storm. You feel like that, like if this is as bad as it gets with this stuff, that he's in pretty good shape. At least that's my take. What do you think?
Yeah, me personally, I think he's. I'm not sure it's even been a storm to weather. I mean, it's been even the days when there might be a little storm in the market. It's almost been like he planned it that way. It almost feels like that, you know. And like right now, I'm sitting here staring up at the screen, one of the screens in the studio. CNN's got a story about how tariffs are threatening a DC wine bar. That is so niche that I'm not sure that they really ought to run the story. But what we're looking at right now is broad-based. The American public has not been feeling this kind of pain that the left was determined that we were going to have. And then when you find that Trump is going to go ahead and say, all right, look, you got negotiations going on now with 170 countries, 170. What that means is it worked. And then China got completely isolated. So China is now trying to figure out whether they can backdoor something with Vietnam. But the reality is China is now isolated on the world stage economically, militarily, and otherwise. And so thus far, the markets have responded favorably to Trump being willing to negotiate. So thus far, this has not even been much of a storm to after weather. Dale Jackson, what say you?
I tend to agree. I think that's probably exactly correct. There's not much going on here with this. That's why it's kind of dropped out of the news here recently, right? And now we're dealing with some guy, MS-13 wife beater is the lead story. So I think that tells us the story, right?
It seems like it. I mean, what do you think, Jeff? Your question.
Well, I think it's one of the historicals. Past presidents would have cratered by now, I think. And no matter what the media do, they're not able to lay a glove on him right now. But think about this, guys. I mean, he's got to negotiate these trade deals. That's going to be a shot in the arm, at least if you're just a Dow Jones Industrial Average watcher, you know, if that's what your metric is. I think it's more complicated than that. But also, I mean, I think there's a potential for another rate cut somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of upside to the economy going forward once you weather this tariff stuff.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think he was also smart to do this right away and do it in mass as opposed to selective and then kind of have this kind of patchwork quilt of stuff. I think he was right to do the mass tariffs, put a baseline on all of them of 10%, and then adjust them based upon the reciprocal tariff that he did, and then be able to willingly pull them back whenever he felt like he could. And I think what you're going to wind up starting to see is some trade deals coming out. I think you're going to see them bit by bit. Some of the more significant ones will take a little time, but you're going to see a constant string of announcements that are going to wind up being favorable, and I think it's going to drive the market in the right direction. Next question, Dale Jackson, what say you?
Well, that kind of goes. I was wondering, you know, we haven't seen the first big trade deal that will set off the, you know, maybe the Donald Trump won the tariff war thing, or this is a terrible trade deal, he caved stuff. How long until we see that first big trade deal?
Well, if it was the Biden administration, it would have taken a year and a half. I think you're going to wind up seeing several trade deals occur within the next 30 days. And I would dare say some of those are going to be what I would call second tier. There are going to be trade deals with Ireland. There's going to be trade deals with Germany. But then you're going to see the EU. And then you're going to see a major energy deal, I think, as we bring our sector online. And you're going to wind up seeing things happen where we're going to have a major trade deal where we give our energy to them and they in return give us great credit on some trade. It's going to wind up being a combination of bigs and smalls. But I bet within the next 30 days, you're going to start seeing these things rolling out. Jeff?
Yeah, I think so too. I'd watch Japan. I'd watch the EU. I think it's inevitable. Even if, I mean, he's kind of playing with house money right now. Donald Trump is. But if this is bad as the storm gets politically, he has way more leverage in these trade negotiations, and these other countries will. They'll feel it. I would expect, I think even in the next week or so, you'll start to see something.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not going to be a bit surprised. I think some of the stuff was already in the pocket, and they were just waiting for the opportunity to bring it out. So, all right, I'm going to take the last question here. And I really kind of got two questions. Is it true that Dale Jackson is a cheating judge who threw Jeff from Indiana under the bus this morning during a singing competition? I don't understand that at all. All I know is that does not sound like fair play. I don't know how to deal with this, but there you have it.
It's absolutely true. Jeff Poor made a bad decision, and I had to correct him. So yeah, that's what happened.
It was Jeff helping Jeff is what it was.
Well, I mean, I gave my honest assessment. I thought it was a dopey segment, but I played along like a good little trooper. And this bastard, he overrules me. So when I try to do a stupid shtick, he doesn't even play along with his stupid shtick.
All right, back.
You know, this is a nightmare for Jeff. He's had to now discuss this twice in one day, something that is not heavy news, and he is so upset by it. You can tell by his voice.
All right, on to serious questions. 1819 ran an amazing story about an amazing interview on an amazing radio show yesterday. That would be Rightside Radio. Stephanie Smith from API has come out with a report that shows that tons of tax dollars appear to be going to some very questionable things through Innovate Alabama. And there's a bunch of legislators on that board. I got about 1 minute. Jeff, is that story going anywhere?
Not really. No, like some of the small business loan stuff, and the state's only administering it, so they got to pay it back. But I would say this about Innovate Alabama. It's long known as sort of a playground for big interest, well-to-do types to pay their country club memberships.
Wow. Well, I look at it as being there's some grossness in there when you see things like Mexican restaurants getting a new kitchen built with tax dollars. I don't get that at all. It doesn't look like it meets the criteria for Innovate Alabama. But Dale, you got any thoughts on it?
It just looks bad. And, you know, you were an elected official in the past, as I mentioned before.
Yep.
You should be trying to avoid the appearance of these things, right?
I mean, yeah, you're gonna put yourself on the board, and then you're gonna hold up yourself as a conservative Republican, and then by the way, you're helping fund the building of a new convenience store in Bessemer. What the heck? I don't know. I think the story could unravel a little bit more, and I hope that certain members of the media will take it and run. But I think they should. I think they should pull that string. Absolutely should. All right, you guys. Thank you much for your time as always. Jeff Poor from FM Talk 106.5 and 1819 News. Dale Jackson from WVNN Cumulus Broadcasting up yonder in Huntsville. And, oh, by the way, with Yellowhammer News. And just little old me. Coming up next, more text messages and our last topic of the day, conservative stars. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. Goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about it goes from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. All the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains called Auburn, straight across the border to what we now call again Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. So I'm gonna skip over the little mini segment I had planned for Dipper number 2 and go straight to Dipper number 3 because I want to end on a slightly lighter note. Yesterday felt heavy. I'll be honest with you. And he went home and Charlene said, "You got to do something better tomorrow." I was like, "Okay, I agree, honey. You're right." I thought, what can I do? And this morning I ran across an article, and I thought, "Yep, that's it." I thought just for a few minutes I'm going to talk about the fact that there really are actually conservatives in Hollywood and in the music industry. Some of them you can name. Some of them might surprise you. But it's like we constantly get barraged by the wokeness and the liberal left, and they applaud themselves inside their little liberal bubbles, and they give themselves awards for being so woke and supporting DEI and transgenderism and all the things and stuff. I'm like, come on, y'all. Like to me, one of the most droll, asinine, just completely unbelievable, virtually inexcusable wokeness moments that I've seen in recent history was Katy Perry getting off the Blue Origin rocket.
Chicks in space.
Chicks and space. But yeah, pop star Katy Perry took a brief trip. I just pulled one article off. Where can MSN. I got this one from MSN. Points out that it was a mere 10-minute flight. It was no piloting required. The vehicle was fully autonomous. It was a chicks in space moment. Charlie's Angels went to space, and we're supposed to believe it was historic. But Katy Perry, though, if there was ever any more blather than this, Katy Perry got off and said she found the love for herself as she was floating back down, and she connected to the strong divine feminine. What does that even mean? Does she hear herself? Does she go home and go, "I'm so proud of the things that I said today"?
But what's funny is that she got pressed on by some of her Hollywood friends because of the amount of carbon emissions that went in the air for her going to space. Genuine, like Emily Ratajkowski, I think her name is.
Oh, yeah.
She was like,
wore her out.
She was like, "Wow, you supported a company that's destroying the earth." It's that she's getting bit on her own, beliefs. It's funny.
Meanwhile, you've got what I would call strong, intelligent women, as the left likes to point out that Trump doesn't like, which is crazy. Gina Carano, remember her?
Yeah.
Gina Carano. Wasn't she an MMA fighter?
She was.
Yeah, MMA fighter, and then one of the actors in The Mandalorian, which was actually a really good show until they got rid of her. And then I almost didn't want to watch it anymore because I looked at the way they treated her, and I thought, I don't know if I want to even be a part of watching this and supporting the show anymore. It was that baseless. Basically, she's a conservative. And I don't know if she's entirely a true constitutional conservative like I believe that I am. But her beliefs were refreshingly conservative by comparison to Hollywood in general. And she comes out and says several things in tweets about, the election in 2020 being very questionable, and about anti-Semitic issues where this is the kind of thing Nazis used to do, and calling it out, and voter fraud. And then I believe she even say something about transgenderism at some point, or gay pride flags. I forget what it was.
I think she's talked about any issue under the sun.
Yeah, and she got blacklisted, and they literally fired her from the show, and she was one of the more popular characters on a Disney episode of any kind at that time. And they just did it summarily. Bada bing, bada boom, she's gone. Katy Perry, meanwhile, gets to fly to space. All right, but the thing that got me this morning about realizing, it's refreshing to realize there really are conservatives in Hollywood. They're there. And in the music industry. So John Ondrasik. Some of y'all may not know who John Ondrasik is, but you may recognize the name of the group Five for Fighting. Five for Fighting is actually not a group. I'm not sure why he calls it Five for Fighting. I think that means the 5 fingers on a fist. But the bottom line is John Ondrasik has got a great playlist of hits that he's had over the years. He's a singer-songwriter. Most of his stuff's kind of mellow, but I really like it. And he's extremely conservative. He's also extremely outspoken. I'm thinking I would love to have a Rightside event, and rather than having a speaker, I want John Ondrasik to come down here and speak and sing. I think that'd be cool. But John Ondrasik, the reason that got me was Red State did an article on him today. He just released a new version of his hit single, Superman. This is the one that says, "It's not easy to be me." He's talking about it's being hard to be a Superman. He changed the song to support an American citizen, or Israeli pianist and musician who's still being held by Hamas. He's been very outspoken on this issue, calling for the release of the hostages. And he changed one of his hit songs, changed the lyrics. There's one part in the song where the lyrics said, "To see a home I'll never see," changing it back to "a home where I want to be." And listen, there are conservatives who are fighting for good causes. You can think of people like, Mel Gibson. You can think, and by the way, when I say conservative, I'm not talking about they're 100% on board with everything I believe. But in the version of conservatism that Hollywood has, they are it. And then there's some who are absolute. Like, wow. And you look at them like, oh gosh, I got a whole list of them right here.
Sylvester
Stallone. Good gosh, yes. Do you know Gene Simmons from Kiss?
Yeah.
Is a Republican?
I think I saw that somewhere. Him at a Trump event or something.
Yeah. You got, of course, you got Kid Rock. Everybody knows Hank Williams. And that's Hank Williams Jr. And then you got like fashion model and businesswoman Kathy Ireland. You got people like Dennis Hopper. I think he's an Academy Award winner, Dennis Hopper. You got Larry the Cable Guy, of course. And then what I like is on a list of names of people, they just went ahead and listed the whole band of Lynyrd Skynyrd. And they got the whole band of the Beach Boys. So I guess like the whole band. And then you got, of course, Brett Favre.
Yep.
And you can go down the list here. What people don't realize, too, is Elvis Presley. Of course, Ted Nugent, Uncle Ted's been on this show, twice, I believe. And you got actors, remember Fred Thompson? You probably don't remember him. Mm-mm. Fred Thompson was actually in The Hunt for Red October. Great actor. And then he went on to become a U.S. Senator for the state of Tennessee, who, little known fact, he's the second cousin of one of the attorneys working in my law firm. Just saying.
Chris Pratt, too.
Chris Pratt. Oh, yeah, absolutely, Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger to some degree, although he disappointed me in the last election cycle.
So I would call him not as much as a conservative, but a moderate Republican that was convenient to be a Republican when he ran.
Wow. Okay. I'll leave that hanging. You got people like, where'd she go? I just saw it on here. Carrie Underwood. Go figure. I didn't know that. You got some that are old that have been gone for a while. John Wayne, Cary Grant, Bob Hope. I did not know Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, is considered a Republican conservative.
Yeah.
That encourages me. It just does.
He's a lousy owner, but he's a conservative.
Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I did not know that. But these are all people I like. So I'm glad they are.
What, I'm funny to you? You find me funny?
He is one of the best, most versatile actors.
Joe Pesci?
Yes.
Oh, he's crazy cool. He's one of these guys who he's hilarious and he can be scary. The person who can do both of those things is a great actor. Who else here? Sammy Hagar. I did not know that, and I'm proud to hear it. Sammy Hagar. I would love to find out that Eddie Van Halen was, but I don't know that for a fact. They just list the whole band of Styx.
Yeah.
The whole band.
I was just telling you the break. I just saw them late last year, and I'm great that there's still a lot of the original members are still playing.
There's a whole lot of them out there, and then there's some like the sports legends of my day: Dan Marino, Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, yeah, absolutely. Joe Perry. You know who that is? The guitarist for Aerosmith.
Oh, really?
Did not know that.
I did not know that either.
I pulled this list. I'm just wading through it. Alice Cooper, which is a guy.
Yeah.
But Alice Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
That's not his real name. It's his stage name. Anyway. And then, of course, I have no doubt when I see this, Chuck Norris.
Yeah,
Come
of course.
on. I mean.
Gotta be.
You can't be a Democrat and be Chuck Norris.
Nope.
No. Chuck Norris eats Democrats for breakfast.
Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the earth down.
That's exactly
so.
right. Yes. Monsters look under their bed for Chuck Norris.
We can have a whole segment of these.
We ought to do a whole segment on Chuck Norris jokes. Dennis Prager, of course, we know that already. Reggie White, sports legend. And then I look at some of the actors and actresses that are still around. And anyway, the bottom line is what I'm saying is this. I take heart in knowing that there is an entire realm of the entertainment industry that is absolutely conservative. And I think that's something that gets lost in the shuffle sometimes, and I'm glad of it. And I've got a piece here from The Hill magazine from just a few years ago called Hooray for Hollywood Unless You're a Conservative, about how many conservatives don't want to step out because they feel like they get blacklisted, like Gina Carano. But my sense is we're moving away from that. And you know what's crazy? Is part of that, I think, is because of Donald Trump again.
Yeah.
You know, he named Mel Gibson and Sly Stallone as his, and John, oh gosh, I just forgot his name. I'll think of it in a second. As his ambassadors to Hollywood, because in his words, we've got to get something worked out here.
Yeah. Well, Joe Rogan, who moved from LA to Texas because of the wokeness and everything going on in LA. I mean, he talked about, he would say stuff on his podcast that was common sense, stuff. And he'd have people from Hollywood, his friends who were conservatives, closeted conservatives, who were like, thank you for saying that. I can't say that. I can't afford to say that.
Yeah.
So it's, I think that is, I agree with you. I think it's coming to an end. It's kind of cool to be a conservative again. But there was not too long ago where people couldn't speak out about issues because they would be ostracized in Hollywood. And it's refreshing to see that come to an end.
Maybe cancel culture is finally getting put in its place.
Yes.
By the way, the Chuck Norris jokes are flowing in on our text lines right now.
Yeah.
Mike from Athens says Chuck Norris used to use body doubles in some of his movies. It was confirmed he used body doubles for the crying parts. Jeremy from Madison says Superman wears Chuck Norris pajamas. Nice. All right, listen, we're going to take a break right now. We'll take the last break of the day on Hump Day. You guys stay tuned. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades all day long. All right, before we go to the phones, I got to tell you, first of all, the grades are in from John from Huntsville. Dale Jackson got an F. I've never seen this. He got an F-, he says, for definitely being a cheater in a singing contest because he clearly stated that Jeff Poor would choose the winner and the winner would get Willie Nelson tickets, and Jeff Poor clearly chose Jeff from Indiana, who I definitely agree he says was a better singer. Anyway, bottom line is JP and I got an A++, and the winner was Jeff Poor for being an outstanding judge. For putting up a lot of nonsense with Dale Jackson, he says. Nice. An F-. Wow.
Maybe the first ever F-.
Hey, did you find a clip of?
I did. Yeah.
All right. So before we go to the phones, real quick, I got to tell you, we were talking about conservative stars, and I mentioned that Ted Nugent's been on this show, and so in the magic of technology, JP just reached back and grabbed an audio clip from none other than Uncle Ted right here on Rightside Radio. Play it.
When we realize the abuse of power by our government that has manifested itself in a cultural depravity right now.
Amen.
And so on behalf of good families, I apologize to the heroes of the military and their families that your commander-in-chief is a traitor, that your commander-in-chief violates his sacred oath to the Constitution on an hourly basis, that our government is now not representing we the people, but most emphatically they represent the communist Chinese devils. And that's a horrible thing to say. When I talk like that, people go, well, that's outrageous. It's outrageous because it's true. Yeah. So we bring a prod, a crowbar, slugging skulls every night in a loving way to participate in this sacred experiment in self-government and get some constitutional accountability back in the Democrats are gone. They're just Satanists as far as I'm concerned. But the Republicans who don't stand up against them are even worse. It's like patriots going to Concord Bridge and shooting their own men. So these are harsh words I'm conveying because we just had a lot of fun a moment ago. I'm a funny guy and I'm an upbeat, positive guy, but you can't have positive at its best unless you fight the ugly and the bad. So that's what I do on a daily basis, and I appreciate you doing that because Mike Maloney said that's what you do. And as an Army Ranger, even if you were just a hardware store operator, which might be even just as important as an Army Ranger, and my dogs are responding now.
Your dogs like Rangers, I can tell.
We thank you, and we thank the patriots who are now engaging. And I hope everybody joining us right now, Phil, joins the Nugent family and millions of American families at Hunter.
All right, got to stop it there before I lose time to go to the phones. But that was Ted Nugent in 2023, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, by the way, he was talking about Joe Biden at the time.
Joe Biden, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. It was 2023, Joe Biden. Hey, let me go to the phones real quick because there's the guy who knows how to sing who calls in quite frequently. Jeff Rowe from Indiana. How you doing, buddy?
You know, Dale should know better than to mess with Alabama's favorite Hoosier.
So you went on and you got hosed this morning, huh?
I won the contest, and then according to Jeff Poor, and then Dale took away my tickets. Oh man, about you was talking about in your first segment there how they didn't like to hear what they said. Hear these professors not liking what they're hearing. I don't think Dale liked the fact that I won.
Well, we stood up for you here, just so you know.
Yes, you did. It tickled me to death.
Oh well, man, we got about a minute and a half. What do you think about this other stuff we talked about today? Mostly the immigration, and then also the conservatives in Hollywood. What do you think?
I think, like I say, these conservatives in Hollywood and everything, they're there and everything, but because of all the wokenistas, you got to keep silent, otherwise you won't work. So they're biased against you. So
I think we're starting to see it. I think we're starting to see it come back around, though. I think we're going to start to see more and more. Like Chris Pratt is openly conservative, and he's still an A-lister.
Yeah. Whenever Hollywood moves to Georgia, we'll be all right because there's too many purple-headed people out there that's still kind of controlling the state.
Well, it's funny because when I was in the state Senate, we helped pass a an economic opportunity. If people wanted to film movies in the state of Alabama, we'd give them a tax credit, and we actually attracted several that filmed here for that reason. And there's also a major studio, a big studio that was built in the Atlanta area, and it's a major. I think Marvel's doing most of their movies there now. They're not going out west for it. And then of course, Walking Dead was filmed in Georgia all the time.
Money-wise, why in the world would you stay in a state that California?
I have no idea.
Everything, you can't even shoot a movie.
I have no idea.
So, you know.
You can't even afford to be out there. You can do it for half the cost just because cost of living here is so much better. All right, brother. I ran long because I had to play Uncle Ted's sound clip, but I appreciate you. Keep singing. I know you got plenty of drive time to practice your singing, so maybe you'll win next time.
You've got a good voice, too. Maybe we can do a duet and karaoke one of these days when I come down.
All right, dude. Be safe on the road. We'll see you. All right, folks. That's it. That's it for the day. It's hump day. Listen, there are indeed more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. You guys stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.